Greetings. Good morning. Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, Delaware. My name is Reverend Pamela Wat, and I am the minister here at this church. Whoever you are, wherever you are welcome here. We are glad that you are joining us during this pandemic on our online virtual worship services. I do have a few announcements today that I want to be sure to highlight before we move into our worship service. First of all, I do want to urge anyone who is not subscribed to our e-newsletter to please go to our website and do so. firstuuwilm.org is our website. It is a weekly newsletter that comes out every Friday and is full of information about ways to connect to online groups and learning and other forms of connection. A few things that I do want to highlight. First of all, we have next Sunday, after the service, we will have an online budget meeting through Zoom, and there'll be information coming out in the newsletter this coming week about how to access that. Be sure to participate in that service. You can dial in by phone, or you could use it online internet access, through, instead of dialing in with a phone, you could use internet browser or phone device, smartphone, or some other form. And we will also be having our annual congregational meeting in May, also by Zoom. So watch the newsletter for information on how to connect there. Also, each year, our Unitarian Universalist Association holds a General Assembly of congregations, and part of that time together is the governance work, updates from various areas of the association, discussion and voting on different issues, and part of that General Assembly is some really fantastic, inspiring worship services, workshops to learn, also social justice and advocacy work. This year's General Assembly was scheduled to be in Providence, Rhode Island, but has been moved online. And so I encourage you to think about attending. It's June 24th through the 28th. You can participate in as little or as much as you want on this online streaming platform. You must register in advance. Registration is $150. We also are going to need delegates to attend this virtual meeting. Delegates have the opportunity to be part of discussions that affect our association and also to register formal votes on behalf of our congregation. If you are interested in serving as a delegate this year, please be sure to contact our congregational president, Tracy Spinka-Domes, and that information will be in our newsletter this week. I would also like to add that the annual General Assembly Ware Lecture will be given this year by the climate activist, author, and journalist Naomi Klein. This lecture and so much more is available to you by registering for General Assembly this year. With our transition to online worship services, classes, programs, and services, I want to acknowledge that our AV team has been really quite amazing through this time of transition. They are constantly improving and tweaking and doing everything in their power to give you the experience that is as close as possible to us all being together in person. John Claney and Cindy Cohen in particular have really been invaluable. And without them, I would not be here in the sanctuary speaking to you, but I would be in my living room with mediocre sound, too much lighting, and a dog barking at all the worst times. So I'm really grateful to our AV team for all their hard work. I'm also really grateful for our musicians, Catherine Brake-Seelan and Cyril Everett Castor, whose heartfelt music is very inspiring during such a rocky time in our congregation and in our world, and who do such a great job each week of picking out music and preparing with honestly little or no direction from me. And right now, that is really, really helpful. It's been a hard time for us as a congregation to be without a music director, but Catherine and Cyril have really made this time easier, and I'm very grateful. Another thing that has shifted is that we had planned today to have a service lifting up the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. Beverly Baxter and Doyle Dobbins were going to share some of their experiences of the work of the UUSC. And we've decided to postpone that or figure out other ways of doing that kinds of communication. I do want to say, though, it is worth mentioning that the UUSC's essential services continue despite this pandemic. Because this pandemic, like all other disasters, is something where the most disenfranchised people are hurt the most, the work of the UUSC is desperately needed during this time. Please take time to go to the UU Service Committee's website, learn more about their partnerships, and support them as you are able. This Wednesday is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, and today we are honoring that experience here in worship. And so be sure to participate as well this week or next in our scavenger hunt, our Earth-based scavenger hunt, and take pictures and or video and send them to us over the next couple of weeks so we can see what you are finding in your adventures in nature. And today I'm going to be sharing some readings that are by a book by Chad Tolman. He is a member of First Unitarian Church of Wilmington. He's a retired chemist and an ongoing activist for social and climate justice. The poems come from his book, Earth Songs, which I was fortunate to uncover here at the church. And now, with all that, let us prepare our hearts and minds for worship.
dark and tall, like a family I have found. In the quiet trees know all. This is my world.
Morning. When you smile, I think, my God, this is what it was like on the first morning of the first day. In this time together, may we imagine that first morning of that first day, whatever that means for you. Let us turn our hearts and minds toward beauty, toward life, toward all that is holy and good. If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to get it ready and join me in lighting our chalice. Our chalice flame connects us, members and guests of First Unitarian Church of Wilmington. Wherever we are one. Our chalice flame connects us, people of our progressive Unitarian Universalist faith around the world, who are also lighting chalices this day. No matter what country we live in or what language we speak, we are one. Our chalice flame reminds us that we are connected to all people, to planets, animals, insects, birds, fish, to the sun and moon and stars, to our earth and all beings who make up our interdependent web of life. No matter our part in this world, no matter how big or how small, no matter whether we are seen or remain hidden, the truth remains. We are one. Please join me in singing this song recorded by Unitarian Universalist Church of Savannah, Georgia. We are gathered.
We are gathered in the Spirit, our bodies are all part, filled with joy and touched with wonder, separate hands but mingled hearts, giving thanks and singing praises for the love that calls us on from our many different places. We are gathered into one. We are gathered in our sorrow. We are gathered in our fear, in our pain and in our worry, in our anger and our tears, as we tend to one another with our gifts and with our care. Our community is strengthened through the faith and hope we share. We are gathered in commitment to a planet that is whole, works of justice, acts of kindness, bless the world and heal our souls. As our voices join together, may our song of peace resound. May we offer in abundance all the grace that we have found.
Please join me in speaking the affirmation of this congregation. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action. Our time for all ages today is a poem called Wonder, written by Chad Toman. Did you ever wonder why there are so many stars on a crisp, cold winter night? Did you ever wonder why birds sing in springtime to greet the dawn? Did you ever wonder why autumn leaves fall or geese fly south in V's? Did you ever wonder how a chick grows or how it breathes inside its shell? Did you ever wonder why kites fly or why kites fly? Or how hawks soar without flapping their wings? Did you ever wonder how millipedes walk without tripping over their legs? Or how fish breathe and elephants swim? Or how fireflies turn on but stay cool? Did you ever wonder why parents love their children? Or music sounds so good? Or ice cream tastes so great? Did you ever wonder why we are here? Or why we are doing what we are or not doing what we aren't? I've wondered. Have you? I've found a world full of wonder. You can too. I invite you now to get comfortable in your chair or sofa or wherever it is you are right now. If you can, connect your feet to the earth, to the ground. Take a nice deep breath. Let it all out. And another deep breath in and out. As we come together this morning from all our different places where we are, we come with different experiences, different emotions. Some of us come bounding in with joyful energy, while some are having a hard time getting up in the morning. Some find themselves with lots of extra time, and others not quite enough time. Some feel incredibly alone during this pandemic, and others would give anything for a moment of solitude. Some of us are worried about our finances while others are doing okay. Wherever you are, however you are responding in this moment, I want you to know that you are good, that we are in this together, and that you are loved and held by a community of love and care. There is no right way or wrong way to go through this pandemic. And so in this time of prayer and meditation, I invite you to find your center, your groundedness, something of your wholeness, connection with Spirit or God. May you return to your best self. and the truth that you are loved. Let us rest now in a moment of silence. We each have those people in our midst, whether physically near or physically distant, whom we miss, for whom we worry, who need our love this day. And as you watch this either live or recorded, I invite you into this ritual by saying their names out loud, or if you have access to the chat box, you can type it in there. So let us say or type in the names of those on our hearts and minds. May those whose names were spoken and those unspoken feel love and healing, and may they feel deeply their oneness with all of us and a oneness with all of our world. Science is curiosity. It is seeking to find out how things work. It's keeping your eyes open, writing down what you see. It's forming ideas, hypotheses about how things work, testing them, always being willing to change as you see new things or see them in new ways. Science is freedom. Freedom to explore, freedom to talk, to publish, to exchange ideas, to follow ideas wherever they may lead. Science is power. It is learning how to change the world, hopefully to make it a better place. But it is people who decide whether to use the power for good or evil. Science is creativity, doing new things, putting things together in entirely new ways. Science is awe and wonder at the beauty, diversity, and complexity of the world. Last week, in celebration of Easter and Passover, we shared some biblical stories. Among them, the very first story of the very first book of Hebrew Scripture. This account of God creating the heavens and the earth and all living creatures is a story that many of us more scientific folks might wish to avoid. It has been used to refute the Big Bang, evolution, archaeological evidence, and other more science-based understandings of the world. And so why would we, good, rational, scientific-minded people that we are, why would we tell that story over and over again? I think that for many of us, we continue to act from the assumptions that get imprinted on us from the earliest stories, experiences, and relationships of our lives. And I think that part of being the best human beings that we can be is about testing those assumptions in different ways and at different times in our lives. Essentially, that's what therapy is for many of us. having someone, a therapist, to reflect back to us the assumptions that we have that we might not even know we have, but that keep getting in the way of our emotional health and our relationships. So in case you haven't noticed, I have a little bias that it's good for us to mind the stories with which we grew up. And I know that many of us, probably most of us, if not all of us, grew up with this foundational story from the book of Genesis. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. When I entered seminary, I was so excited that I would get to learn ancient Hebrew and ancient Greek. I imagined that I would finally get past all of the inconsistencies in these different English translations and read the Old and New Testaments in their most original form, and suddenly know the Bible's true meaning. But the first disappointment I encountered was in learning that this ancient Hebrew scripture was written centuries before the development of punctuation. There are no commas, no periods, no quotation marks, no capital letters. And here's a great example of why punctuation is so incredibly important. Indeed, there is a big difference between "let's eat, comma, Grandpa," or "hey, let's eat, Grandpa." As it says, commas can save lives. This absence of punctuation meant that in ancient Hebrew, there were no vowel points. Vowel points are used near a letter, sometimes just little dots, to indicate which vowel is being used there, or how different consonants are functioning in the word. And without the vowel points in those early editions, it's sometimes unclear how that word is being used, or even which word is being employed in that moment. So learning ancient Hebrew only made me realize how much we don't know about that ancient text. And I say all that to say that in this story where God made light and dark, water and land, fish and plants and animals and people, there is a line in that story that has become an entire worldview. Even for people who aren't Jewish or Christian, or aren't anymore Jewish or Christian. And I think it's worth noticing what exactly happened according to that text on that fated sixth day. So here's the text from the first chapter of Genesis, beginning with verse 26. "And then God said, 'Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over the creatures that move along the ground.' So God created mankind in his own image, and in the image of God he created them. Male and female, God created them. God blessed them and said to them, 'Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground.' And then God said, 'I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food.' And it was so. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day." This idea of humans ruling over or having dominion over is a translation from a Hebrew root word, radad, which is a flattening down or submitting totally. And depending on how the vowel points got written down, centuries after the earliest versions of this unpunctuated text, determines whether we are talking about people who flatten down or have dominion over the earth, or people submitting to or bowing down before the earth. So you're either trampling it down or you're submitting yourself to it. Kind of a big difference, right? Biblical scholars debate which word the earliest writers of this text meant. And the difference is, in the word is literally the difference between one vowel point or two, which discerns whether the word is radah, dominion over, or yarad, bowing to. And you wouldn't have to know a thing about this text to know that as descendants of this tradition, we have been taught to believe that there is a hierarchy. And human beings are at the top, and everything else is beneath us. And this word radah that became the prevailing interpretation of this text is not just power over, but it is a violent, coercive, harmful power over. In this word is a power that assumes that our needs as people come before anything else at any cost. Radah, dominion over, is our over-industrialization despite how it drives climate change. Radah is monocropping because it serves us instead of honoring the land's inherent need for diversity. Radah is mountaintop removal, deforestation, excessive travel, an entitlement to disposable bags, containers, and other goods that end up in our rivers, oceans, and wildlife. Radah is caring more about managing and decorating our houses than we do about the global environment or the quality of our air or the landfills. Radah, dominion over, is owning houses that are bigger than we need, buying new devices every year, using herbicides and pesticides so that our native, non-native gardens can look perfect and exotic, instead of going with the natural order of our region's plants, insects, and wildlife. Radah is a habit of buying next day delivery or constantly shipping in goods that we can get locally. And I know this is really unpopular for me to say this, but this radah, this dominion over, is consuming foods when we have the economic privilege to choose that are a burden on the environment. That is food that has been shipped a long way, or required an intense amount of resources to develop, or that have resulted in the suffering of animals. There is no question that the majority of our country believes that humanity exists in dominion over the rest of creation, to use our power to subdue the land and other created life. But what if? What if we are meant to bow down to creation? What if the word is yarad, to bow down, to lower oneself to all of creation? What if Chad Tolman is right in his poem on science and we, people, have all this power to use for good or to use for evil? And really what we're meant to do is use that power to make the world a better place as a whole. A part of this story that's indisputable is that people are special. The writer bothers to break one sentence down into verse. So going from the prose of the rest of the story to poetry for just one line. This one line, verse 27, so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. The writer wants you to really slow down on that one sentence. It's as if to say there is nothing more important in all of creation than that sixth day, that moment when God created people in God's own image. Now, of course, people wrote that, right? I mean, this isn't a cow writing that humans are the best ever. It's humans writing that humans are the best ever. But not just humans. Humans wrote this text with centuries of experience with humanity. The first people who shared this story knew that people mess up. People are power hungry, cheating, lying, self-interested, and they were using this story to call us back to our better selves, our higher purpose, our greater way of being in life. The tellers of this story were saying, you are made in the image of something so holy that holiness itself stepped back and said, it is good. Which, again, good is a horrible word that gets translated in other contexts as excellent or beautiful. Wow, that is excellent, beautiful. You are beautiful. This story is not in competition with science. This story is all about science based on what people knew then. Chad Tolman writes, science is creativity, doing new things, putting things together in entirely new ways. Science is awe and wonder at the beauty, diversity, and complexity of this world. Here we are approaching the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, and the most impossible thing has happened. The earth is resting from our dominion over it. While people around the world are staying at home, air pollution levels have plummeted. Satellite images have revealed a clear drop in global levels of nitrogen dioxide, a gas which is primarily emitted from car engines and commercial manufacturing plants and is responsible for the poor air quality in most of our major cities. For the first time in 30 years, people in northern India are reporting seeing the Himalayas from where they live. The reduction in pollution is a huge gain for fighting climate change, but it's also an opportunity for us to better survive COVID-19. Studies show that even just this sudden shift to cleaner air can reduce the severity of symptoms related to the virus. I mean, it makes sense, right? When your breathing is diminished by the virus, the last thing you need is another factor like pollution, making it hard to breathe. Less pollution means greater chances of surviving COVID-19, and it means less strain on our hospitals. A National Geographic article stated cleaner pandemic skies should also reduce other pressures on hospitals struggling with COVID-19 cases. A large body of evidence shows that short-term changes in air quality have an immediate impact on the number of heart attacks, strokes, and emergency room visits. But as soon as that pollution goes back up, we get more heart attacks, more strokes, more emergency room visits. Animals are also getting a break this Earth Day. In Brazil, environmentalists report a surge of newly hatched baby sea turtles making their way to the ocean, suddenly unencumbered by people and our pets who typically crowd the beaches and keep them out of the ocean. I've heard too reports of animals coming out of hiding into major cities. A coyote was photographed roaming the streets of San Francisco. Wild boar are in the streets of Barcelona. There are mountain goats hanging out in a town in Wales. In Mediterranean shipping lanes, there are suddenly whales swimming. And with the closure of national parks, wildlife can finally freely roam about the land. A ranger at Yosemite National Park said of the bears there, quote, "For the most part, I think they're having a party. I think that this time of year is difficult for the animals here. There can literally be walls of cars, stop-and-go traffic, or people in the park." She said the bears usually find corridors to get from one end of the valley to the other to avoid humans, but since the park closure, she said rangers noticed there are more bears walking through the meadow. For the last decade, the Hong Kong Zoo has been unsuccessfully trying to get a pair of panda bears to mate, and now that steady streams of people are not moving by their enclosure, they're finally relaxed enough to succeed. And all of this makes me think about a question that someone posted on Facebook a few weeks ago. After this whole pandemic thing is over, what do you hope doesn't go back to normal? Once this pandemic is over, what do you hope does not go back to normal? I mean, don't get me wrong. I know this is a hard time. I get that our economy is suffering. Individuals and corporations and small businesses are in dire financial hardship. People are sick. People are overworked. There is an imbalance that is happening right now, and there is tremendous suffering, and I wish that weren't so. And for a long, long time, people have been saying, we cannot fix these global environmental challenges. But I think that human beings were created with a kind of ingenuity and heart for this work. We can solve dynamic, complex problems, and I believe that we can fix the problems that we are facing as a world. But more than that, I believe that we are created to do this work, to bow down to all of creation, to erase this long-held notion that humanity is at the top and everything else is ours to do with as we choose. Instead, we must reimagine our worldview. What could a new worldview look like? Not one that leads us not to trample over the earth and creation, but one that inspires us to offer reverence to the earth and to creation. Sally McFaig was a Christian theologian who died last year, and her work was around theological metaphors, and she invited people to imagine God not as a person, not as a spirit, but to imagine God as the world or cosmos itself. What if the world is God? And all that is good and holy and right is earth itself and all that lives and breathes on earth and in the surrounding atmosphere. And we were created to help care for it and stay in right relationship with it and to be that holiness itself. Nothing is separate then from one another. Nothing is separate from God. God is all of us. How then would we interact with our land? With water, with birds and fish, with animals, with one another? These are the kinds of questions that I think this pandemic is asking of us. What would it look like to restore balance to our world? For those of us who never imagined we could fly less or drive less, how, after weeks of staying at home, could we imagine that differently? For those of us who never imagined that we could reduce our burning of fossil fuels, how can we begin to imagine investing in clean air, clean energy, clean transportation? And during this world health crisis, many of us are in new ways learning to listen to and empathize with the needs of people we didn't imagine needs for before. People in service industry, healthcare industry, small business owners, nature itself. We're learning to listen. So many people are growing gardens and food in new ways, watching nature unfold in our backyards and in our windowsills. We're not going to get through this pandemic with a framework of hierarchy. We're not going to get through this pandemic with a hierarchy that places one country's needs above another. We're not going to get through this pandemic with a framework where rich people are more important than poor people, or where young people are more important than older people, or that the lives and well-being of white people are more important than the lives and well-being of black people. We won't get through this with a hierarchy that says that the needs and lives of free people is more important than the needs and lives of incarcerated people. We will not get through this pandemic even with a framework that says that the interests of people come above the interests of our world as a whole. These are the destructive models we have been operating on in this country for way too long, and at the expense of the health and well-being of ourselves, one another, and our earth. We were created in the image of something good that we might proliferate, not proliferating human beings, but proliferating that goodness and beauty and awe that is inherent in everything. Water, land, stars, sun, moon, bugs, plants, animals. In the midst of pandemic, and whenever it is time for us to leave our homes safely, may we live as if that were so. I invite you to join me in singing Blue Boat Home.
Standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat
Good morning, First Unitarian Church of Wilmington. This is Kate Franta with your Stewardship moment from the Environmental Justice Task Force. This week marks Earth Day's 50th birthday. 50 years of celebrating Earth Day. And what's inadvertently happening is the world is marking this by not commuting, not traveling, and being on lockdown, and the pollution is dropping. It's quite remarkable. You can see the peak of Mount Everest when you're in the Himalayas, the peak that is normally obscured by pollution. It's visible on a clear day now. You can also see dolphins swimming in the channels of Venice because the Valparaiso water taxis are not running. So there are some silver linings to this global pandemic shutdown, and they are exposing the seventh principle that the Unitarian Universalists embrace, which is the interdependent web of life. We respect the interdependent web of which we are all a part. So this week I ask you to pause and remember Earth Day. It's technically on the 22nd, but feel free to pause every day this week. And I'm going to ask you also to think about how you can give back to this community, First Unitarian Church of Wilmington. Yes, you can give your treasure through the Give Plus app on your phone, or you could mail in a check to the address on your screen. But I also think we can pause in this time of social distancing and think about what it means to be in community together. And when we come back together physically to meet in circles again, how do you want to participate? Would you like to give your time and your talents to the Environmental Justice Task Force, the Human Rights Task Force, or to ILIA, which is the Independent Living for Young Adults team that helps kids who are aging out of foster care become truly independent when they turn 18. I'm partial to the Environmental Justice Task Force, which brings you challenges in the e-news every month. I'm trying to give you a new challenge that is a climate benefiting challenge. We're also bringing you movie nights when we can have movie nights again. We had another one scheduled for May, but it won't happen in May, but it will happen. And we have Cleaning Up Creek Day, we have potluck dinners, and of course the ethical eating branch of the vegan subcommittee. And for those of you timing me, it took this long for me to mention avoiding animal products in your diet may be good for your health, but is definitely good for the climate. Feel free to take a meatless or animal product free Earth Day on the 22nd to celebrate. So my friends, this week, please consider how, when we come back together again physically, you would like to get involved with your time and your talent. This community runs on the passions and intellect and enthusiasm of all of its members, and we welcome your involvement. Please say with me now the offering dedication that is on your screen. To the work of this congregation that is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings.
on the outskirts of town, through a shadowy glade. In their journey through time, two rivers will meet, sharing one bed as they dream of the sea, of the sea. While the others are sitting and the rivers are run, silver moonlight and cold in the sun. In their journey through time, two rivers will be, sharing one bed as they dream of the sea, of the sea. Flowing together when life is still green, born of the sky to earth in the sea. In their journey through time, two rivers will be, sharing one bed as they dream of the sea, of the sea.
No matter where you are in this time of pandemic, whether it feels like a glorious vacation or excruciating boredom or driving loneliness or desperate driving need for alone time, whether you are anxious or depressed, whether you are overworked and tired, whether you are learning some fun new hobby or it feels like you're constantly doing dishes and laundry right now. No matter where you are, know that we are in this together. And we are part of one world, and it is good and beautiful. It is diverse and wonderful and awe-inspiring. May you feel that truth in your life, and may you live as if it were so. As we extinguish our chalices, may we be reminded that there is a spark of the divine in each and every one of us that remains bright and that will carry us and our world through any challenge.
This land was made for you and
South Pacific, to the